a lot of questions from the public, and I'm saying this because I see the same questions. Yeah, every time we host an opposition leader, there's one thing that comes up as far as the future of this country is concerned, and the question is, what is the agenda of the opposition apart from capturing power in 2027?
Well, thank you very much. You know, the opposition unites very many different people. The minimum shared position is that they are all against the continuation of the Ruto government. So you cannot pretend for ab initio that we share a progressive or positive agenda. But our responsibility as leaders, you say, apart from your desire that you say bye-bye to Ruto, what is it that you can mold as a comprehensive alternative agenda for the country? To me, part of this process is not yet totally complete for very significant reasons. First of all, as it stands today, the opposition has not sufficiently linked up with Gen Z.
Okay.
And you cannot tailor an agenda whose main consumers are going to be Gen Z without their participation. So while we lay the foundations about macroeconomic policy, governance, war against corruption, killing totally irrelevant and expensive white elephants like affordable housing, remodeling and rationalizing the education system, while we're doing those basics, we are also looking steps of how can we expand our base to be co-owned by Gen Zs, and then listen to the agenda as part of our front agenda. So you cannot close that gate if you respect others who are supposed to come on board.
Right.
Similarly, things like choosing a presidential candidate. You cannot pretend that you choose a presidential candidate when there are some credible options as presidential candidates out there. We're also waiting for you. Sort out some things. Yeah. Show seriousness that you are that the different moving parts are in sync,
right,
and then we get on board. You want to give them an opportunity to be part of that process. So those are some of the issues. But I think fundamentally,
yes,
I've served in government before as a minister, and I've known what government can do.
True.
And where things can go wrong. And we're seeing a lot of what is going wrong today. So one of the most important things is return rationality to the management of public affairs. Stop the business of devaluing the office of president by insulting everybody who doesn't agree with you as being foolish, stupid. Who taught Ruto to know things better than us?
Good question, which we shall get back to that. But you've spoken about killing off white elephants, such
Yes.
as the affordable housing.
Yes.
The affordable housing, that conversation didn't start with President Ruto. It's actually something that
started earlier.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And it precedes even your time in government.
Yeah.
So when we say that we want to kill that off, what are we going to replace it with? Because it's a conversation that
we replace it with a rationalized management of affordable housing provision. And that was already underway through a national housing scheme, which is not tax people collectively and reward a few selectively, as a Ruto's housing thing is. What Ruto has done to housing is what is done to health insurance.
Okay.
You, instead of improving on an existing program that has taken thought, experience, and a lot of time to mold, instead of improving on it, you throw it away and replace it with something very, very poorly thought out, very, very expensive, and very irrational.
Okay.
You go to a village in the countryside and start building high-rise things, and you call them affordable housing. Who is going to stay up there? It is driven by the desire to sell cement, to sell steel and doors, more than to avail affordable housing to people. Go to Ethiopia and see what they're doing about affordable housing.
Okay.
If you go to Turkana and you want to give people affordable housing, and you look at the rhythm of their lives, that during the rain season they go to higher ground, during the dry season they go to the plains. You speak about transhumans. How can we make decent living consistent with their lifestyle? You don't start thinking, how can we get Devki steel metals and Simba cement to arrive here and start building high-rise buildings? So this is the narrowness of a mentality that is warped. And that's one of the things that we're going to be, we are preparing to reverse. So reversing the mistakes of Ruto is an important but insufficient reason for forming government. But the other agenda includes best practice. I mean, there's a lot of intelligent, experienced, exposed Kenyans who have an idea about what government should be.
Yes.
And we have a responsibility that just like in the professions we've shown the world that this country can produce, let in politics the best fit step forward.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, every time we have a conversation with the leaders in opposition, what you've said in the last 2 minutes doesn't come out clearly. Again, going back to what the citizenry are saying.
It's my responsibility to help them make it clear.
Going back to what the citizenry have been saying, and these are, potential voters.
Yeah.
The word confusion always comes up.
Yeah.
Again, you've answered the question of agenda, which is a very good thing. And it sounds really good on paper. But when it comes to implementing, and we've had successive governments saying the same thing, that they will do this from the time of President Kibaki, then we had President Uhuru, then now we have President Ruto. And every time they get onto the campaign trail, they say some very huge substantial words, but when it comes to implementing, it has always been a problem. And I'll pick President Uhuru for example. At one point he did say there's massive corruption in this country and he has absolutely no idea how to deal with it. Of course, I'm paraphrasing here. Then now we have the current president telling us, give me time to deliver, I might be the messiah you've been looking for. How should we trust the opposition if they do capture power and whoever captures tells us, give me time, or there's this thing going on, what do I do about it?
There are two sides to it. First of all, the inflation of promises is ridiculous. You remember Ruto was promising tutatenga tumepanga. That nonsense, we must try to clean it out of our politics. That's the important thing. The most important lesson learned is let us have a positive agenda, but don't be tempted by promising heaven under very difficult circumstances. To me, stabilizing both Kenya is a critical thing. We are sliding out of competitiveness. We're getting worse than we deserve to be. We have the capacity to do much better. So reversing that slide is a critical starting point. So to promise heaven when you have not sorted out the slide in a competitiveness of made in Kenya.
Right.
When you're losing ground even in regional markets, let alone international markets. When you are stalling in the qualitative returns on Kenyan labor. It's nonsense. So some of us saying, like, temper down the promises. But there's another thing that's important. You mentioned about President Uhuru saying, hey, I don't know what to do. Sometimes you can be overwhelmed by that office. But at least he was honest. His successor will pretend otherwise. He's overwhelmed, but he makes up for it by running around the country and building castles in the sky. Now, the most important thing for a nation to do in this kind of times is believe in systems more than individuals. How do I mean? One of the most important achievements of the Kibaki presidency was the creation and institutional recognition of a national economic and social council. Its most important thing is that we look at Agenda 2030.
Okay.
You look at blocks, building blocks for that. What are the programs and what are the projects in each program that lead towards achieving the goals set out in a 10-year program?
Right.
So the raison d'etre of public policy is aligning available resources, existing circumstances to defined goals. If you're walking about without a destination, you cannot get lost. And Ruto is walking around without a destination. So you just walk about.
Okay.
Like a chicken in the morning, you get out of the house, the sun has risen. You try to find where there's an important funeral, where there's a new church to be built. Or if there's nothing, you take some bulldozers to pretend to launch a new road. And at the end of the day, you come back, you say, I've worked. But if we can revive a National Economic and Social Council, as we work towards Agenda 2063, break it down into decades of committed action. An agenda that's inclusive, that is looking at the genuine conditions of Kenya, and it's depoliticized in the sense that it's not owned by any president or any political party. Then we can hold to account those who hold public office. How much they have approximated our collective shared agenda and vision. So to me, that is a firewall against the short-termism of political populists.
So, Daktari, I will not give you the burden of holding brief for this government, but I would like us to be honest at the very least to the citizens of this country, because when we talk again to opposition politicians, they never seem to point out anything that the government has delivered on. And I believe to some level the government has delivered something.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that this government has failed completely, or they have just not achieved what we probably expected them to have achieved in this time?
But remind me of the unique things that Ruto has achieved.
Well, like I said, I will not give any of us burden of holding a brief for the government, but you
seem to be holding brief for them without saying exactly the achievements they have had. I think a major thing is that things have not fallen apart as much as they could possibly have, given the disruptions that they have occasioned in health, in education, in taxation policy, in the proliferation, profligate lifestyles of the corrupt, and the obvious abuse of public office. Things could have been worse. So to a certain extent, they have not played out the dire consequences of their mismanagement. That's about as much credit as I can give them.
Okay. All right, fair enough. When it comes to the whole point of holding the government to account, what is the current opposition? How can we score the opposition in terms of just holding the government to account and making sure that they are being honest with us?
No, I think this is one of the weakest points of the last few years, not just now, almost a decade now, that the formal mainstream opposition is part of government.
Okay.
So even if it's parliamentary, the opposition is almost informalized. The crippling of opposition has been a major failing of Kenya's democratic experiment. In the 1990s, when Moi came back to power through winning 36% of the popular vote, from day one he had a minority government, and he desperately needed a coalition to be able to govern, to pass government business in parliament. So he approached Raila, whose NDP joined a coalition with government. It became a proper coalition, so that Raila and his NDP moved out of the opposition. But the rest of the opposition understood that in itself it was the only existing opposition to government. That was all right. But then the more recent shifts, particularly the ODM support for Uhuru when he split with Ruto in last phase of his government, and the current arrangement, it does not show the opposition or part of the opposition properly moving out of opposition and being in government, and then the rest of the opposition consolidating itself as opposition. So you see, that's the ambiguity we have. What is the opposition in Kenya right now? It's factions of disaffected government party operatives and people outside parliament. So this is a major weakness, because the watchdog in the house is so feeble that, for example, it voted democratically in parliament to strip itself of the oversight role in the privatization of public institutions. Now, when you see members of parliament going to vote in majority that yes, we surrender the power of scrutiny to the executive, is a statement about how lowly it has gone. That's mainly because of an ambiguity of who is opposition. So that's one level.
Okay.
The other level is now the opposition outside government. You know, the opposition after government can only state outrage about what government is doing, can point out alternative things that could be done, and can make promises that when we get into power, we'll change this. It will not be like this again. So that is the misfortune of the opposition outside government. Apart from, of course, aligning with the popular forces if there is outrageous activity and fueling mass action to preempt certain things. I mean, for example, if this nonsense about changing the constitution to give Ruto 7 years in presidency is actually brought into parliament, we will be part of a national movement that will actually physically stop it. Yeah, and so it has not come to the head yet, but if it does happen, they will be stopped in their tracks. And I think that is one of the areas when they see the anger in the Gen Zs. They know that this can be done, and it's likely to be done.
Lately, the opposition has been having trouble in parliament, just running business, and whatever is defined in their role. For example, just last week we saw MP Robert Mbui being kicked out because he had this point of contention and it wasn't taken seriously because he was talking about quorum and they were discussing this particular privatization bill. So it seems and looks like the opposition has got an issue even in parliament and just conducting itself in parliament.
I don't think it's about opposition conducting itself in parliament. It's about a pliant speaker's office.
Okay.
That's the chair of the business of government has become such a handmaid of the executive. They're shameless in blocking legitimate concerns by members of parliament. That's not a failure of the opposition. That's a failure of the speaker's office.
Okay.
But when the speaker is reduced to a handmaid of Farouk running around the country to distribute ill-gotten money in the name of empowerment, totally desecrating as an important institution like the speakership, you don't expect much less. I mean, we have seen pretenders, the Cholets of this world, and now see the Wetanguras and them all. There's a disgrace. They have sacrilegious actions against a dignified institution as the Speaker's office.
Yeah.
So that is the failing that you are seeing in that brazen treatment of Mbui on a matter that was legitimate to be raised in Parliament.
Right.
Yeah.
So how then do we remedy that? Because we have another 2 years before we get to the election.
To me, the best case scenario, the very ideological, and this is very ideological, the ideological battles going on within ODM are pitting the people, the heirs of the spirit of Oginga Dinga, to which are shared as architects of a new Kenyan national renewal, against opportunists who came on board because Raila was building a party that could help them win elections and get high office. So the passengers of choice are trying to take over the vehicle they join for opportunistic reasons against the wishes of those who hold true to the original cause of that struggle. If those who hold true to the original struggle triumph in this internal fight, we are going to see the resuscitation of a progressive opposition in Parliament, which will be able to hold Ruto to account. If that fails, the crippled opposition with a small faction of diehard original ODM will not go the Joho way. And the disaffected members of Ruto's party, particularly from Rima, they will be the stamp of opposition in Parliament, but they will increasingly be dependent on the energizing effort of Gen Zs outside Parliament and loud, clear leadership from the formal opposition parties that are emerging to try to hold to check in check some of the excesses of the Ruto government.
All right. Siti, you were to say something, I interrupted.
We are fortunate to have Dr. MUKHISA Kituyii here. This is a man whose reputation and experience precedes him. There are people who became ministers and that's all we remember of them. But unfortunately, for Dr. Kituyii, he has the distinction of actually being a thinker. He's somebody who notably actually thinks. And the positions he has held and the accolades that he has held point to this. So he can't be treated as your garden variety politician who simply happens to have people who believed in him and voted him in. The bar is slightly higher when you deal with someone like MUKHISA Kituyii because of the credentials that I speak of. The positions he had in the opposition, the second liberation, all these things that people speak of as history. One doesn't mention MUKHISA Kituyii's name, but it is prominent if you understand history. Now, I am a student of history, so I know. How we ended up in this united opposition is of interest to me. Because everything I see about this united opposition does not speak of profound thinking. And I'm going to explain what I mean. You have somebody whom you oppose, and he has demonstrated sufficient things for you to oppose quite effectively. And yet, the structure that is required to actually bring about the change that is needed is very rarely talked about. What I hear being talked about is the ills of this government, which I, as a Kenyan citizen, I can also see, and some of it I can also experience. The opportunity to actually present a completely different narrative that promises, and with a clear chart and path and a structure that demonstrates what it is that this united opposition can do, I also do not see. So the united opposition doesn't offer me hope. What they do is they're telling me what it is that other politicians tell me. Now I go back to the man, Dr. MUKHISA Kituyii. How it is such a person, such a reputation, he is their spokesperson. When he explains it here, he makes sense. How is it that they are not able to communicate effectively what it is that will deconstruct what it is that we see and we do not like, and construct the hope that one can actually feel, sense, touch, that would now bring about the change that people keep clamoring for?
All right, thank you very much for generous comments about me and my past. But there are two sides of answering to your concern. The first one, the easier one, is the reality that if you look at the history of Kenya's democratic experiment, Kenyans do not vote for the people with the best set of ideas on how to govern the country tomorrow. Kenyans vote against someone. Between Ruto and Raila, we had helped Raila to graft a very, very tenable, progressive, optimistic agenda for governance, for national renewal. There were a few populist things were thrown in there. Some of us were hesitant that they would be very difficult to implement. But fundamentally, the core agenda of government was very, 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 very decent and thought out. But Kenyans did not vote on, is the wheelbarrow bottom-up agenda more realistic than that? No. They voted against that law. So, to a lot of Kenyans, whatever policy outfit you come with is going to be interesting academically for institutions of government, for diplomatic community when you go to receptions and dinners with them to assure them that you'll have a better government. But the electorate is saying we want to vote against Ruto. So the mantra of Ruto must go one term actually reaches a lot of more people than if I gave you a comprehensive agenda about how we can build a shock absorbers to deal with 2032, when the most borrowing by Ruto has been kicked down the road and will be maturing. And it is a massive expectation of satisfying our domestic and external leaders. That is very intellectually important. But it is not, it does not have political sex appeal in the political market. So that is one level. The other level, and this relates to the question of how Kituyii is associating with this opposition. I decided over the past year or two that I have come to the end of my desire to seek elective office. And I talk to a lot of friends who share my passion that this country can do better. And so I asked myself, what is the best way I can contribute to making this governance better? I joined the opposition with respect of colleagues who are leaders in the process. But I tell them, I have 2-3 things I want to bring to the table. One, I was intimately involved in the creation of NAK of Mwai Kibaki, Charity Ngilu, and Michael Malwa, which by its success attracted the LDP of Ntimama, Saitoti, Raila, when they abandoned Kanu to come on board into the opposition. And it was a very difficult and challenging experience. People were there because of their shared hatred for Moi and Kanu, not because of any positive shared agenda. Some even saw the other by their tribe as part of the problem. It was painstaking, but we put structure to it with a lot of support from friends, including, I know there's a small team of us who are hosted by ANC as guests of the ANC in South Africa, staying at the ANC house outside Johannesburg for 2 weeks, bonding, trying to thrash out our differences, our gut reactions towards each other. And I see the same in the opposition today. The good thing about the opposition today is they are genuine that we should only field one presidential candidate against Ruto. But the road there is littered with all manner of landmines and ugly hurdles. And so having somebody there who says, we have been through this, keep hope alive, and let us look at the structural issues that can keep us together. Let us downplay those things that differentiate us. Let's find some ways away from the media to sort out the discomfort we have with each other. It's part of adult responsibility that I think a leader of my generation can contribute to this country. At another level is to help say, okay, I know it's popular to say Ruto must go and Ruto amekuwa mwizi and all. It's popular and much of it is true. But that one of the critical things I learned from Kibaki is if you genuinely want to reduce the cost of political transition, however much you hate the politician on the other side of the equation, give him a route of escape that you will not dehumanize him when he's out of office. Don't make it too expensive for him to surrender power. Give him an assurance that you'll give him his dignity. I loved the Kibaki decision at our first cabinet meeting. He asked cabinet, to donate Cabernet Gardens to Daniel Arap Moi. Moi had lived in that place since 1967, but he had never grabbed it. But Kibaki's action, in spite of the humiliation he personally had suffered from Moi, to make cabinet donate that residence to Moi was a statement of political maturity. We disagreed with you. We don't want to dehumanize you. We want to set a precedent that there's life after State House. We want to reduce the cost and anxiety of transition. And some of us have to keep hammering at this. It can look small. It is never seen on your evening news. But I think it is important that as we go towards the inevitability of Ruto leaving office, we must open avenues that Ruto will have a chance to live a dignified life as a former president in this country. And this has to be built into the work towards the election, not the last day in the heat of the campaign statement.
The things that you say, that is now talking true politics to the reality of Kenya. Because that is exactly what has contributed to this so-called true smooth transition that we actually have. Let me explain why I introduced my question to you with the trajectory that I did. There is Kenya as we know it and the politics of Kenya as we know it and as we experience it. Someone like you who's been where you are, you know we could do a hell of a lot better. That given the wealth of our resources, beginning from our human resource to our natural resources, one, we actually have a rich country in whichever way you look at it. If you look at just the depth of the plunder that we've seen over the years, and that the country is still standing, it tells you that the resources are actually fairly profound. But surely we must have a clear economic structure that will enable the wealth that we have to actually move up and be beneficial to the citizenry. Because if the citizenry is wealthy, the country is wealthy.
That's right. But you know, the current government does not believe that.
Do they even understand it? Let's talk about, do they even understand this thing that I'm saying? Because I have this problem with our county government leaders, the ones we call governors. It is a crying shame that, with very few exceptions, we seem to have a bunch of people who are completely and thoroughly incompetent, because there are all these resources that region has never witnessed or seen or experienced. And the thing that they seem to be able to do best is to supposedly employ people in large numbers. And some of these numbers are even ghosts. The actually spiritual numbers that don't even exist. Now, you're talking about monies to a community that is led by somebody from that community, that is supposed to benefit that community, and yet we experience what we're experiencing. The knowledge base in this country and the education levels that we have attained, leadership that actually transforms a nation can't be leadership that does what has been done before, because we'll just be marking time.
Okay. History teaches a number of lessons. That democracy is not an extremely efficient way of choosing the best leaders.
No, it isn't.
One American cynic said that in any democracy, idiots are numerically majority, and once in a while they elect one of their own. Democratically.
Indeed.
Yeah, so that's one thing, that if democracy chose the best leaders, there is no way George Bush Jr. would have beaten Al Gore.
No.
There's no way Donald Trump too would have defeated Kamala Harris.
Or Hillary Clinton, for that matter.
Hillary Clinton. So democracy has a soft underbelly. But that's, be as it may, it is the least expensive system of transferring power from one leadership to another.
Yes.
In other societies, systems, they will kill everybody in the opposition to get power, and so on. But let me put it this way. I did mention that a fundamental problem with the thinking, I think, of this government is the essence of what is development. There's this delusion that development is government amassing a lot of money and then demonstrating generosity by what it does with that money.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the most outrageous expression of that is giving bags of money to Supreno, Speaker Tangula, and others to go around in public places and say we are what we maendeleo, and throw money at the poor. You know, distribute, this one will get 200 each, or sometimes 1,000 if there are not too many. And you call that development and empowerment. Totally devoid of reason, totally devoid of adult thinking. Another model of development is what I learned. You know, I was on a state visit with President Kibaki to Bangkok, Thailand, and the then Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra had been a champion of the turnaround of the East Asian economies after a crisis of the late 1990s. And I asked him at dinner, what is it that you did that turned things around so quickly in your country? And he said, there is one thing that I believe is very important. When a country's economy is in the doldrums, you try to marshal resources, and it's like a tree. When it's wilting, you do not water it on the leaves and flowers. You water the roots. Because the flowers and the leaves and the branches will suck water from the roots, and with the nutrients. So what we did is we targeted the primary producers, eased the burden they had, eased the conditions of production, gave them credit through their producer cooperative societies at competitive prices discounted by government. That way, they got wealth. Primary producers do not have a saving culture. So they turn that into massive consumption boom. And the entrepreneurs are the ones who suck in that boom, the consumer boom, investable capital, and they trigger sustainable economic growth. I saw Kibaki try that with taking back KCC. Government had lost KCC, which had been taken by Moi. Kibaki made cabinet buy it back from the Mois and use it as a benchmark to cushion the producer of a minimum guaranteed price for milk, come rain, come sunshine. And that was the basis of putting money into the pockets of primary producers, who can then turn that into consumables, and entrepreneurs capture that money to invest. It worked. It can work here. But who is representing that thinking in this government?
You see, my concern here is not even this government, them they're already in power. My concern is that thinking being explained to the public by the group that calls itself the United Opposition, because it makes sense. You don't need to think very hard. It makes perfect sense.
So my brother, this is what I'm trying to say to you. we have very, very serious ideas about where Kenya should go. But we are dealing with the teething problems right now. Internally, we have to overcome little hurdles which are there, which are inevitable. It takes time, it frustrates, but we are getting over them. And I think we have had a kind of grace period with the by-elections that are about to be completed.
Next week, yeah.
Yes, and after next week, the difficult challenge now of converting a group into a team gets underway. And it's only when you deal with the fundamentals of structuring a team out of a group of disparate parts that you start saying, now, let us polish the content. So what you and I are discussing now is the content. But let us model the vehicle in a way that it can continue maturing as a delivery vehicle for the content that we think is so desperately needed in this country.
If we were to talk about the differences that you see and what you call small teething problems, which given the time it's taking can't be small, and they may be teething, but they can't be small. Some of them, I would argue, are even inherent. However, because there's a commonality of thought, there is a driving force that galvanizes the group together. If we were to talk about a time frame, what sort of time frame would one need to actually get the members of this group, the key members of this group, to actually be in absolute tandem when it comes to the sort of thinking that we've just discussed? Understanding what you need to do to actually bring about that desirable end. One. Two, to communicate it effectively so that contrary to what our political history has taught us, it actually acts as the very thing that could give you the votes that you need.
All right, what time it takes, I wish I could be precise and really narrow the time frame. In my view, the momentum was slowed down by these by-elections. Even the internal wrangles about who should fill a candidate and who should not, and things like that. The process of setting up a secretariat, which I'm glad we are almost hosting you at a reception to launch. But then there's a series of retreats, candidate retreats with facilitation that are coming up. And it's my expectation that during those retreats, some of the candid conversation that has not yet been held properly is going to take place. And after that, we'll be in a position to have a clearer sense of when the initial hurdles will have been over. I know we'll get over them. But I know that if we handle it badly, there will be a lot of blood on the floor while I'll go through this process. But I think it's very important that we continue engaging and capturing the imagination, not just of ourselves and our egos, but of a lot of the other Kenyans out there who want a role to play in a clear path towards national redemption. So that's the one level that I'm thinking about. The easier thing, if you are united, is how to communicate to the nation your agenda. We are bubbling with great ideas. I get a lot of young persons who come to volunteer. They're thinking on communication, on refining a national agenda. And it often hurts me that we have not reached the point at which we put this on the front banner. Not because we want to respond to Ruto saying, they are fools, or pumpavu, they don't have anything to say. First of all, we are not building an agenda to impress Ruto that we're clever. So we're not talking to Ruto about our agenda. We want to talk with and talk to the Kenyan population. But there's something important that hasn't been raised here, but I want to get back to it. You know, the history of the world over the past 1 year has shown us the great critical capacity of Gen Z's generation of born when there's the internet. Their capacity to organize beyond ethnic and even national borders. When some people say, but what were they doing in Tanzania? They don't understand that Gen Z's, by their nature, by their gender, they are sans frontières, they're without boundaries.
Yeah.
They are always going to be major players. But we are failing to define what is the best way to use their energies. What's the best way Gen Z's can be players? If you look at what's happened in Tanzania, part of the problem is the old politics just ground along without any consideration of them. Wazees talking to each other about who is on which side, on the Mama's side or on the Tundelizo's side, and leaving out a very engaged, very conscious, very energized population without an avenue of their participation and ownership of this process. When I see Kenyan Gen Zs not adequately taking up voter registration, not adequately being engaged in the creation and management of political parties in the opposition, not actively evolving themselves into a political movement with the infrastructure that exists under our constitution, I fear that the most potent force for change in the country is not getting mainstreamed as managers of change. As this goes beyond the united opposition or anybody, I think media, public intellectuals, religious leaders, and leaders from within the youth community have to help understand how can we bridge this divide between a conscious, determined, and angry generation and the infrastructure of political competition.
So how will the united opposition achieve this?
No, it's not a responsibility of only the united opposition. It's a responsibility of even Gen Z leaders.
It's a
they
national
have seen, yes, it's a collective national responsibility. They have seen the power that they can have by mass action. But they have also seen the limits of mass action without infrastructure. So where we need to go is, can we create a legitimacy in their thinking about existing political institutions and open ways for them to mainstream their anger through institutions of competition, political competition? If we fail this, we can go through an election where gerontocrats are competing with each other, and the young person saying none of the above, what you are doing is irrelevant to us. And we may not manage the chaos that can ensue when they delegitimize a competition that we have been thinking is the path to our success. So to reduce the cost of social transition in Kenya, it is a collective responsibility that the energies of Gen Zs have to be mainstreamed in the political competition.
When you talk to the Gen Zs, what do they think about this? Because really, we started by finding out what it is they think and what it is they want.
They want something different from what there is today.
What is it that they want?
No, they want a Kenya that unlocks opportunity. You know, they are a generation that is really looking at opportunity. Government should be a facilitator, not a provider. And they know that they don't look to government to give them the daily ration of food. But they just want government out of their way, and they want government to create a space where they can realize their potential, where they can live out their dreams. But then they have not thought about what is the pathway to realizing that kind of government. You see, cynicism is very important in critical development, but cynicism cannot build institutions. And that's the challenge we have. When you talk to some of the leaders of the Gen Zs, some leaders from the Gen Zs, they have not elected any leadership. And that's part of the problem, that when we talk to some of the leaders from the Gen Z group, what they say is, we agree on these things and we have to do better and we all have to do something. But nobody is ready to dare step forward and pretend that they are spokespersons of Gen Zs. So nobody can sign onto a document on behalf of Gen Zs.
So then how do we make a decision for them if we do not involve them in this particular conversation?
We don't. We don't. We must involve them in the conversation. The question is not how we make a decision on their behalf. The question is, how do we find the avenues of engagement
so that they can be part of the decision
to make them part of the mainstream?
If the Gen Z were in any way representative of the Kenyan society, then would one then not say that just as we have a very clear, diversified political outlook and ways of engagement, that they themselves would have something similar? That there are those who may be inclined towards joining what you may call mainstream political parties. There are those who probably like the idea of just philosophizing about it, and those who enjoy the idea of just being in the opposition. And if that diversity were to be looked at, would you say that the political parties that we currently have would be a representative holding place where Gen Zs could actually find refuge?
You will never find a place where all Gen Zs will go.
No, that is true.
And also, not all Gen Zs are politically engaged. A lot of them are socially mobilizable around causes that can excite them. But there's others who are, social romantics. That it is fashionable, it's a cool thing, and you get along. And it exists in all generations. Even in our struggle for the second liberation, there were persons who kind of got hallucination from the idea of opposition. And it's the nature of things that you have to walk. Some of the time you're walking in the same direction with them, but some of the time they are hungered by the roadside. So you cannot expect something uniquely different from a younger generation. The biggest thing about the Gen Zs today is twofold. One, I think, is the first generation since my generation to find young adults who get selfless and say, I'm ready to risk death if it will contribute to my colleagues having a better day tomorrow. Since my generation, there has not been another generation in Kenya. The younger people of the past 10 years, the main ideology you could sell to them is pesa mfukoni. Low-hanging fruits. So that is the story of yesterday, and that's a very, very good thing about the Gen Zs. But that space now has to be utilized much more. It can be a potent force if we can unlock it.
There's a question here from one of our viewers. Let me just get it real quick. Kuna jamaa anajiita GVic on YouTube. He's saying, to be honest, Gen Zs existed only for one day in June. Their parents have made them just as tribal as their parents. Unfortunately, the upcoming elections will be a tribal arithmetic, not demographic. Do you agree with our viewer?
Well, my long experience in life has taught me to predict things after they have happened. So I wouldn't be as daring as that person in predicting how Gen Zs are going to vote.
Yes.
But I can mention this. Kenyan Gen Zs inspired the Gen Zs of Bangladesh, of Nepal, of Madagascar,
Tanzania.
And in those countries, those Gen Zs have changed governments. And these Kenyan Gen Zs have seen how those who are inspired by them have gone a step better. Secondly, tribal thinking is an easy sedative to a lot of people, and you can get all people from all generations to go tribal in their thinking. But I think the broad and collective behavior and social mobilization of Gen Zs remains beyond the tribal boundary. I did mention earlier that sometimes it's even beyond the national boundary. They spill over into neighboring countries because of a shared solidarity that goes beyond identifying with the country.
Yeah.
So I don't say that space has been so adulterated for them to think tribal as of now. But the third thing is, even those with a tribal consciousness in their political arithmetics should be made to understand that their tribe benefits very strongly if you have an alternative government that does not just serve a very narrow agenda and narrow constituency the way the Ruto government has done, particularly in the appointment of critical senior positions.
Right.
Yeah.
Another comment here. This is from Pwani Economic Revolution. He says, or she says, I'm not sure, but this is what they say. Seems like winning an election is the only overriding objective. Where are the safeguards that confirm the incoming government, which is now the opposition government in waiting, shall be better than the current one? And you did mention something.
I thought I'd tried my best to answer to that question. That some of us have no reason to be actively engaged in politics today, except a sense that it is possible to bequeath my children and the ilk a better Kenya than I'm seeing today. And that goes beyond just winning an election. I think Ruto must go. can be sufficient for a minimal defeat of Ruto in the next election. But we don't just want to tie ourselves against Ruto. We also want to tie those who are likely to seek to be leaders of this country to an agenda. It's a commitment on our side of the equation about what we are going to do the day after the elections.
Okay.
More than sounding clever to the international community, the diplomats and the intellectuals in the media. Can we tie ourselves to an agenda that is performable? And to me, one of the things about that is really reinstating the National Economic and Social Council, giving it statutory protection from tamperings that started under Uhuru and have continued under Ruto. Yeah, and having a comprehensive 100 days agenda of what you lay on the ground as a foundation for what you're going to be doing over the next 5 years.
Right.
Actually, talk to us about this council and why it is you keep emphasizing its importance.
You know, politics has a 5-year cycle.
Yes, it does.
You create things, you develop an agenda and promises to be fulfilled in time for you to win the subsequent election. You do not plan long term. But if you have a national agenda that is long term, it is not owned by one political party. Parties come to interpret how they are better than the others in implementing that agenda, in dealing with the short-term mitigating factors. If there's a pandemic, if there's a drought, if there's a global inflation and disastrous performance of export markets, who are better to manage and realign our ambitions with the longer-term goals. So to develop medium and longer-term goals, you cannot totally depend on a campaign manifesto, which is win an election, remain popular, and win the next election. That's why, to me, Economic and Social Council defines the medium to long-term agenda as a sounding board against which to assess the performances of governments with their medium and short-term agendas.
There's this issue that was mentioned a while back, a couple of weeks actually, and it was in one of the dailies. And it was about how the United Opposition will share government position. So Fulani will be the president, and then the other one will be the running mate. There was a prime minister somewhere. There was a partner who was supposed to take, 50% of the government. And these issues are some of the issues that actually anger Kenyans into thinking that these guys are just here to actually capture power and share it among themselves.
Right.
They don't think about me on the ground.
Right.
How would you address that?
It is a reality. It is a reality in Kenya that prior to elections, when parties come together, the dominant thinking among some politicians is to promise a share of government, share the offices. I saw there was a lot of contention about that when NAK and LDP united in 2002. Promise as a prime minister position, promise as a minister of works. No, we'll keep the minister of finance. No, but then give us interior. So that's one. It came out particularly blatantly in Ruto's campaign to become president, when he was promising people percentages of government. Marima, you'll have 9 out of the 22 ministers. But promise us you'll give us finance and you'll give us interior. That kind of arithmetics. I have even overheard some people within the opposition starting to gossip about, can we start agreeing about sharing positions? It is a monster that I abhor with every muscle in my being. Part of the creation of a more positive, progressive, alternative government is how to graduate political thinking beyond ethnic arithmetics in allocation of public offices. And I genuinely think it is a challenge. You cannot run away from it and pretend it is gone. It's a challenge, and we'll do very well to start integrating younger professional players into the opposition ranks to bolster the thinking that our agenda is not ethnic distribution of public offices. It's not easy, but it is necessary.
Because again, that is, this unfortunately is what is making that young generation we were talking about, because they have this ideology of being partyless and tribeless. And when they start seeing, the Murima community is being given this, and then the western region is being given this, and then the coast and the Kambas are getting this, for them, they start feeling, again, like they're being orphaned by the people they expect to be giving them direction. So perhaps that shall be addressed. How you do it, again, we leave it to you. to ensure that it happens. But getting back to this whole issue of intergenerational conversation, something that the late former Prime Minister mentioned, and it was rejected by loud voices, but we have just had a conversation here saying that one way or another that conversation needs to happen, and people have been trying to have it in different particular sectors. Different society groups are trying to bring youth into their communication and their conversation. How do we ensure that we can have that conversation with our leaders in the united opposition to ensure that the voices and the ideologies that these young people have will be heard? Because one way or another, we have got to have that conversation.
What will this conversation be about?
We said that we need to bring them to the table to have to allow their voices be heard towards making a decision for their future. So it's about the future. This conversation is about the future.
I think what we are doing here today is part of the solution. We must start using platforms like media organizations that have an audience, including significant numbers of Gen Zs, to talk to the agenda and listen to the agenda. That conversation has no institutional setting as of now. And I think one of the main things that Gen Zs have to learn is that they must start finding institutional mechanisms through which they can unlock their power. To just hold it in abeyance and say, not this one, not that one, but which one? That does not offer solution. They can get into a situation that happened in Sudan, where young people, driven by anger, desperation, and ideas about what could be better, brought down a dictatorial government. But they had no infrastructure for absorbing power. And factions of the military took power in their name and started competing with other factions until they destroyed the country.
Yes.
So the ability to bring down government is an important but not sufficient goal in political management. And that is something that has to be understood very clearly, particularly among politically ambitious Gen Zs. The ability to pull down is different from the ability to construct something in its place. And what we are trying to say is that, can we combine our competencies to make sure that we bring down one set of leaders, but to make sure that we manage the transition and have a clear set of leaders that represent something better?
Yes.
And not leave a laguna that can be exploited by non-democratic forces.
Okay, if I can offer some advice, there are very many Gen Zs who are in positions of influence. If the united opposition can reach out to those individuals, have a conversation with them, and let these particular conversations be available to the people that they influence, perhaps that is one avenue. So we're talking about artists both in the music industry and in other forms of art. We have a lot of young people who are leaders in academia. Those are individuals you can talk to. We have other Gen Zs who are also, they have political ambitions. Perhaps if they're given positions within the united opposition to vie for various seats, whether it's the MCA, governors and whatever they want to vie for, if they are given this particular opportunity, that can be another way of actually reaching that audience that we would like to talk to.
But better still, if the united opposition makes it clear and broadcasts this as we're doing now,
yes,
that they welcome ideas and they have a forum where you can actually come and share. And you can, this debate we're talking about at a national level, that it can begin with the united opposition and saying, we offer that opportunity, whatever grouping you are in, whatever it is that you do, I'm picking up from your idea.
Yeah, sure.
We as the united opposition have an opportunity. You can come. This is what we do. You come here.
Yeah.
Come and see, and when you've had that conversation, you can then talk about what you've seen and what you've experienced. Because very many people in this country talk about politics from a purely theoretical point of view, what they've heard somebody say and what somebody else has heard and so forth. But the challenge to actually experience it, so that when you speak, you're speaking about something you've experienced. Because if you say you're better and you don't have a sufficient body of individuals who can testify to the fact that they've actually seen the difference. And that difference is actually in your imagination and the group of people who say that it is a change.
I'll actually give Rigiji some credit because he's been trying to appear in podcasts that are led by people that influence the audience that we're trying to talk about here. And I think that is an opportunity for the wider united opposition to tap into. There are very many podcasters right now and they have massive following. You know, you can appear in their platforms and express yourself.
Following is good. We've always had this disconnect.
Yeah.
Following before social media and the 21st century communication age with large crowds at rallies, it doesn't necessarily translate into votes.
We're not talking about votes here. We're talking about eyeballs and information.
I am talking about votes. I am talking about votes. Because that's the eventuality. All these activities that we are speaking of have to translate into votes for them to make a difference. If they can't translate into votes, I don't want to say it's an exercise in futility.
Yes.
But it's just an engagement for us to have a little social fun.
Yeah.
But they must translate. Yes, they must.
I agree.
They must translate into votes. Yes.
Yeah. Because I know I know the government is listening. I won't be shocked if we see them next week having a sit down on a show and having a conversation.
Nothing wrong with anybody picking up a good idea.
Nothing wrong.
And trying to run with it.
Yeah.
You see, I want to just sort of like go back a little bit, Daktari. This council, it has piqued my interest because it offers something that I have not seen. Who is in the council? What energizes it? What guarantees that it will stay beyond an election?
You go back. There was a Kenya National Economic and Social Council, which was created under Mwai Kibaki, and which basically was scuttled under Uhuru. So you can check the rules of procedure and how it was set up, and the method for choosing its leadership. So those are mechanics of creating. An important thing is that it is not a council of government. It is not a council of the party of government. It's a national council where there's credibility about persons who join. Some positions are automatic, like the head of the Association of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the head of the Investment Authority. These are persons, institutions that represent a lot of collective accumulated thinking on where we're trying to go, what are the challenges we're making, and they enrich with practical experience the thinking of theory. There will be some professors from universities. There will be significant public intellectuals who have been important in embodying our thinking about where we are and where we're trying to go. When we were forming the National Council, the person who was steering that process was Professor Nyang' Nyong'o. And he was doing that one also through that nexus, building the comprehensive Agenda 2030. So that the Economic Council prefects the implementation and institutionalization of this, but also monitors how public policy relates to this agenda. So it has been done here before. We just have to revive it. And now, having seen what has happened, we have to build a firewall to protect it from short-term political ambition. Because short-termists don't like somebody who blows a whistle on them and says, look, what you're trying to implement here goes contrary to our medium and long-term agenda as we have agreed. So it's a sounding board for auditing government plans to be consistent with a shared national collective agenda. It happened very interestingly in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka went into turmoil because of political infighting for like 30 years.
Yes.
But it had, in the early 1970s, developed a national comprehensive health agenda, Sri Lanka up to 2000. And all political players had bought into it. So all these groups will fight, topple each other, kill each other. But whoever came found the basis of their relevance, the raison d'etre, to be in how I promised to implement what committed ourselves to as a nation. So this is this is what I'm saying, that there has to be a canon where we're trying to go, and everybody has to commit themselves that what they do brings us closer to River Jordan.
You know, the thinking the thinking is beautiful. The when we have a nation such as ours, where even a commitment to simply honoring our constitution and abiding by it is a problem, and when you have a country where the highest office in the land has a tendency of disregarding the law, we do have a long way to go.
I don't think we have a long way to go. We can remove them from office because of political bad manners. And the custodians of political hygiene are the electorate and the institutions of civil society, the media, and parliament. If you return their fidelity, that will be the main guardian that people do not get away with blatant disregard for the rule of law. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dr. Lastly, as we exit the stage, or rather as we release you and allow you to attend to the other duties, what would be your parting shot to the voter who's currently listening to you and perhaps is thinking, all right, they are considering, they're now doing window shopping?
Well, thank you very much. You know, there's a unique problem of Kenyan voters, is that we are very rational, and we see the problems we suffer because of bad political leadership, and we curse the choices we made until it is a run-up to an election. Then we take leave of our common sense, open appetites and adrenaline for ill-gotten wealth or even just petty bribes, and then made very, very, very short-time inspired choices in picking who would lead us. And after the honeymoon, which lasts like half a year, we are back grumbling for the next 4.5 years. I think a nation is as good at democracy as its electorate are. And the Kenyan voter should try to cure themselves from the appetite for short-term gain and think about long-term national interest. If they do, they should demand of us leaders to show them that we think about the pain that they are living through, the reality of their daily lives and their nightmare, and that we can reverse the biggest threat to democracy that exists in Kenya today, which is, historically, people vote for a government because they think that tomorrow will be better than yesterday if that set of people are going to be in power. Or like they said in Germany, democracy is a competition in the marketing of hope. That you make people believe that next Christmas they have better food on their table than last Christmas because you have come into power. The crisis of Kenya is we're living through a moment when children are resigned to die poorer than their parents, and that their grandparents were richer than their parents. On a downward slope, hope is a major casualty, and people stop being stakeholders in democracy if it does not promise them something better than what they're living through. The incipient hopelessness in our society is a wake-up call. Unless we can redeem realistic hope, opportunistic soldiers can come to the street and pretend that they have better solutions than what politicians are offering.
Okay.
And that's a collective responsibility for public thinkers and the Kenyan electorate.